Buried deep underground, locked inside ancient texts, or hidden in plain sight, some artifacts defy all logic. From a perfectly carved metallic sphere found in billion-year-old rock to an Egyptian carving that looks suspiciously like a light bulb, some discoveries are too bizarre to ignore. Are they proof of advanced ancient civilizations?
This is an amazing experiment. It will prove whether or not the ancient people had knowledge of flight.
Or something even more mysterious? Today, we uncover the 20 mysterious objects that shouldn't exist. Spheres that shouldn't exist. What's 2.8 billion years old, buried deep underground, and might just rewrite history? If you're thinking fossils or ancient bacteria, guess again. We're talking about perfectly shaped metallic spheres, discovered inside solid rock in South Africa. Yep, you heard that right. These aren't just some random pebbles. Known as Klerksdorp spheres, these objects have perfectly symmetrical grooves running around them and are encased in rock that dates back billions of years. A time when, according to science, the most advanced life on Earth was single-celled bacteria. So, who or what made them? That's where things get weird. Some of these spheres are almost perfectly round, and according to a museum curator who studied them, their surfaces are so tough that even steel tools can't scratch them. Now, scientists have a couple of theories. The safe bet. Some say they're just natural formations, minerals that hardened over millions of years into these strange shapes, kind of like the Moqui marbles found in Utah. But others aren't so sure. They argue that the precise symmetry and grooves suggest intentional design, something that nature isn't exactly known for. And if that's true, then we have a serious problem with our history books. Either nature is way more precise than we ever gave it credit for, or someone, or something, had the ability to craft these spheres long before humans were even supposed to exist. Iron Pillar of Delhi. Here's a mystery for you. How is there a 1,500-year-old iron pillar that refuses to rust, even after centuries of exposure? Yeah, you heard that right. In Delhi, India, there's a 7-meter-tall iron pillar that's been standing for over a millennium and a half. And unlike modern iron structures that fall apart after a few decades, this thing is almost untouched by corrosion. How is that even possible? The pillar dates back to around 400 AD and is dedicated to King Chandragupta II. But here's the part that has scientists scratching their heads. It's made of 99.72% pure iron, yet it doesn't rust like regular iron. Even today's metallurgists struggle to recreate this kind of durability. So what's the secret? Some researchers believe it's a combination of factors. The iron has high phosphorus content, and thanks to Delhi's dry climate, a protective layer called iron hydrogen phosphate formed over time, preventing oxidation. Sounds logical, right? But even with these theories, there's still one big question. How did ancient Indian blacksmiths create such an advanced metalworking process 1,500 years ago when even modern ironwork can't match it? The book no one can read. Now let's talk about something that has completely stumped historians, linguists, and even AI for over a century. A book written in a language no one understands. Yeah, that's the Voynich manuscript, one of the most mysterious books in the world. This 240-page codex was discovered in 1912 by Polish book dealer Wilfrid Voynich, and to this day, no one has been able to figure out what it says. The pages are filled with weird symbols, bizarre plant drawings, celestial charts, and strange diagrams that look like they belong in a wizard's spell book rather than an actual manuscript. And here's where it gets even crazier. No one can even identify the language it's written in. Over the years, scholars, cryptographers, and even World War II codebreakers have tried to crack it. AI programs have been fed the manuscript, hoping to find patterns that could point to a real language. But every attempt has failed. So what is it? Some believe it's an alchemical guide, while others think it could be a coded message from a lost civilization. And then, of course, there's the wildest theory, that it's an alien language, proof that whoever wrote it wasn't even from Earth. Skeptics, on the other hand, argue that it's nothing more than an elaborate hoax, just random nonsense meant to trick collectors. A 2,000-year-old airplane. What if the ancient Egyptians knew of aerodynamics centuries before modern science? Sounds crazy, right? But that's exactly the theory behind the Saqqara bird, a tiny wooden artifact that's had researchers scratching their heads for over a century. So what is it? Back in 1898, archaeologists discovered a small wooden bird buried in a tomb in Saqqara, Egypt. It's made of sycamore wood, has a wingspan of about 7 inches, and weighs just over an ounce. It's now kept in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, but here's the thing. No one knows what it was actually used for. At first glance, it just looks like an ordinary bird carving. But unlike real birds, its tail isn't horizontal, it's vertical, just like the stabilizers on modern airplanes. That's what led some researchers, like Egyptian physician Khalil Messiha, to believe this wasn't just a toy or religious symbol. It was possibly a model of an ancient flying machine. So could it fly? Unfortunately, nope. Scientists and engineers have tested replicas of the Saqqara bird, and it doesn't glide well. It's too heavy, unbalanced, and unstable. Even modern aerospace researchers ran computer simulations on it in 2023. And the results? Not looking good. The artifact's center of mass is off, and it would roll uncontrollably if it were actually meant to fly. Most historians believe it was symbolic, possibly representing the falcon god Horus or a sacred boat ornament used in festivals. Some say it was just a kid's toy or even an ancient weather vane. The London hammer, a tool from the past, trapped in rock from the distant past. A hammer found inside a 400 million year old stone challenges everything we think we know about history. Yeah, you heard that right. Back in the 1930s, Max and Emma Hahn were out on a walk when they spotted something weird. A chunk of rock with a wooden handle sticking out. Curious, they took it home, cracked it open, and found what looked like a hammer embedded inside. Now, here's where things get super strange. Some claim the rock surrounding it is hundreds of millions of years old, and estimates suggest the hammer itself could be as old as 500 million years. That would mean someone, or something, was using tools before dinosaurs even existed. Of course, not everyone buys this theory. Geologists argue that minerals simply hardened around the hammer over time, making it look ancient. Plus, its design is authentic to 19th century American tool production. But here's the real kicker, if you want to test it. Too bad, the hammer is locked away in a creationist museum where science isn't exactly welcome. Earthquake detector. Let's talk about a piece of ancient tech that shouldn't have existed, but somehow it did. Back in 132 AD, a Chinese scientist named Zhang Heng built something that would have seemed like magic at the time, a seismoscope that could detect earthquakes hundreds of miles away. Almost 2,000 years before modern seismographs, this thing was predicting quakes before anyone could feel them. And get this, in 138 AD, the device signaled that an earthquake had struck 300 miles west of Luoyang. But here's the crazy part, no one in the area felt a thing. Naturally, people thought the machine was nonsense. Until days later, when messengers arrived confirming the disaster. So how did it work? That's still a mystery. Some think it had a pendulum system that triggered metal balls to drop into dragon-shaped openings, indicating the quake's direction. Others believe it used fluid mechanics, but no one really knows. What we do know, scientists have built replicas, and they actually work. How did Zhang Heng figure this out 1,500 years before modern earthquake detection? Genius engineering? Pure luck? Or did ancient civilizations understand more about the Earth than we give them credit for? The Salzburg Cube, a metal cube trapped inside 20-million-year-old coal? Yeah, that's not something you expect to find. Meet the Salzburg Cube, also called the Wolfsegg iron. Found in 1885 in Hallstatt, Austria, this weirdly shaped lump of iron isn't just some random rock. It has 4 flat sides, 2 convex sides, and a deep groove running through it. And here's the wild part. Scientists agree that it was altered by human hands. But how is that possible? The coal it was found in is 20 million years old. Humans weren't even a thing back then, so who or what put it there? At first, people thought it might be a meteorite, but nope. Tests showed that all of its elements are Earth-based. Others suggested it was ballast from early mining equipment, But that theory falls apart because the area had never been mined before. So what's left? A freak geological formation? A lost piece of ancient technology? Something else entirely? Until someone figures out who made it, when and why, the Salzburg Cube remains one of history's strangest discoveries. Dresden Codex. Ever heard of an ancient book that might hold the secrets of the end of the world? That's exactly what some people believe about the Dresden Codex. Despite its name, it has nothing to do with Dresden, Germany, except for the fact that it's kept in a museum there. This book was actually written in pre-Columbian Mexico, most likely around the 11th century in Chichen Itza. But here's where things get even weirder. Many experts believe it's not even the original, but a copy of an even older text from around the 8th century. So what's inside this mysterious book? Some say it's a doomsday prophecy, predicting the end of the world. Others argue that it's something way more practical. An early astronomical chart, mapping out the movements of the Moon and Venus to help ancient civilizations plan religious events and celebrations. That's the official explanation. But here's the thing about end-of-the-world prophecies. You can't prove them wrong until doomsday actually happens. So what if the people who think this book holds a warning for the future are actually right? The first analog computer. Imagine diving to the bottom of the sea and pulling up what looks like nothing more than a rusty chunk of metal. That's exactly what went down in 1901. A group of divers checking out a 2,000-year-old shipwreck off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera, probably expecting to find some old pottery or coins. Instead, they uncover something that makes no sense at all. Nobody paid much attention to it at first, just another ancient artifact, no big deal, but then they ran some X-rays, and what they found? Yeah, that's when things got crazy. Hidden inside were intricate gears, dials, and inscriptions. A level of precision that seemed impossible for the ancient world. It turns out this wasn't just any old relic. It was an advanced astronomical calculator built over 2,100 years ago. This device could track planetary movements, predict eclipses, and even account for the irregular motion of the Moon, something scientists wouldn't fully understand for another 1,500 years. But here's the catch. There's zero evidence that anything like this ever existed in ancient Greece. No writings, no similar artifacts, nothing. Some experts even believe this wasn't the first of its kind. It may have been a copy of an even more advanced device that has since been lost to time. And if that's true, it means history is missing an entire chapter of technological innovation. Romans invent flexible glass. Here's something that might make you rethink ancient technology. What if the Romans had discovered flexible, unbreakable glass over 2,000 years ago? Surely that defies belief. However, according to ancient records, during the reign of Tiberius Caesar, a mysterious glassmaker supposedly created a type of glass that could bend instead of shatter. Imagine dropping a glass cup and watching it bounce instead of breaking. That's what we're talking about here. So what happened? Why don't we have Roman flex glass today? Well, if the legend is true, Tiberius wasn't a fan. He feared that if glass became this durable, it would replace gold and silver, crashing the economy. So instead of celebrating this mind-blowing invention, he had the glassmaker's workshop shut down, ensuring the secret died with him. Is there any real proof this ever happened? That's the tricky part. No actual samples of flexible Roman glass have been found, but historians like Pliny the Elder and Petronius wrote about it, which keeps the debate alive. Could it have been possible? Maybe. The Romans had access to boric acid, a key ingredient in modern shatterproof glass, which they could have extracted from steam vents in Tuscany. If they figured out how to mix it into their glass-making process, they might have been centuries ahead of their time. The Lost Bridge of Legends. A bridge lost in a time shrouded in legend, Adam's Bridge, also known as Ram Setu, has sparked debates for centuries. Could this be the key to rewriting history? This 48-kilometer-long underwater formation stretches between India and Sri Lanka and has fueled intense debate for centuries. Is it a natural formation, or could it actually be an ancient man-made bridge? According to Hindu mythology, this bridge was built by King Rama's army over 1 million years ago to cross into Lanka. The mystery deepens. Satellite imagery now reveals a sequence of limestone shoals, eerily precise in formation, as if shaped by an unseen hand. What do scientists say? Geologists argue that it's just a natural formation shaped by ocean currents over thousands of years. But not everyone agrees. Dr. Badrinarayanan, former director of the Geological Survey of India, studied core samples from the site and found large boulders sitting on top of marine sand, which could mean that these rocks were placed there artificially. Here's the tricky part. Dating the structure isn't easy. The coral and sand in the area only tell us when they were last moved, not when or if the bridge was actually built. Some say the legend is just a myth, while others believe it could be evidence of an ancient engineering marvel that has been lost to history. Spark plug, 500,000 years ago. It started as a normal rock hunting trip in 1961. Just 3 guys looking for geodes in Olancha, California. But when they split one open, let's just say no one was expecting this. They found a spark plug inside the rock. One of the discoverers, Virginia Maxey, claimed a geologist examined it and said the rock was 500,000 years old. Now, if that's true, it means someone, or something, was using technology long before humans were even supposed to exist. Sounds crazy, right? But here's where it gets shady. The geologist was never named, and the artifact mysteriously disappeared. All that's left are X-rays and some old sketches. Skeptics argue it's just a modern spark plug that got trapped inside quick-forming sediment, not some ancient relic. But even the critics admit there's no actual proof of a hoax. So did we just stumble on proof of ancient high-tech civilization? Or is this just a case of mistaken identity? Too bad the object is conveniently missing, because this mystery is very much unsolved. Mystery of the Dropper Stones. What if I told you that 12,000-year-old alien artifacts might have been discovered in China? Sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, right? Well, that's exactly what some people claim about the Dropper Stones, a set of mysterious granite discs supposedly found in the 1930s. So let's break this down. Back in 1937, an archaeologist named Chi Pu Tay, or at least that's the name given, supposedly led an expedition to the Bayan Ha Mountains, a remote area on the border of China and Tibet. While exploring caves, his team allegedly uncovered 716 carved stone discs, each about a foot wide, with spiral grooves and tiny hieroglyph-like markings. Here's where it gets crazy. According to the legend, these markings weren't just random scratches. They were a written record from extraterrestrials who crash-landed on Earth 12,000 years ago. If that's true, this would be one of the oldest accounts of alien contact ever recorded. But hold on, where are these stones now? Well, that's the million-dollar question. If these discs were real, you'd think they'd be proudly displayed in some major museum, right? Nope, no one can find them. Supposedly, they were studied by Chinese archaeologists for decades, but their findings were dismissed as nonsense. A researcher named Tsum Nui, again a name that may not even be real, claimed to have translated the stones and concluded that they told the story of the Dropper, a stranded alien race. After being laughed out of the academic world, he allegedly moved to Japan and disappeared from history. But the kicker? There's no official record of him, his research, or these stones in any museum. Things got even more bizarre in 1966 when a Soviet magazine called Sputnik ran a story claiming that Russian scientists tested the Dropper stones. They supposedly found that they contained high levels of cobalt and other metals, making them behave like electrical conductors. Oh, and when placed on a turntable, they allegedly produced a strange humming sound. Sounds pretty cool, doesn't it? Almost too cool. And that's because, well, there's no proof this ever happened. In 1974, an Austrian engineer named Ernst Wegerer visited a museum in China and claimed he saw 2 of the Dropper stones on display. He even took photographs, but the images are so blurry that they don't prove much. In fact, they look suspiciously like bidiscs, ancient Chinese jade artifacts that were already known to exist. Then in 1978, a book called Sun Gods in Exile hit the shelves, claiming to be the diary of a British scientist who visited the Dropper people in the 1940s and learned about their alien origins. But guess what? The author later admitted the whole book was a hoax, And yet, some people still believe the dropper story is real. What do you think? A total hoax or history's greatest cover-up? The world's oldest reactor. Think nuclear power is a modern invention. Think again. In 1972, scientists in Gabon, Africa, made a discovery that flipped everything upside down. They found uranium ore that looked like it had already been through a nuclear reactor. But that wasn't possible, right? Turns out, Mother Nature beat us to it by 1.8 billion years. This natural nuclear reactor kept itself running for 500,000 years, a feat modern scientists are still trying to fully understand. Now you might be thinking, okay, but maybe it's just a rare natural occurrence. That's what some scientists say, but others, including Dr. Glenn T. Seaborg, a Nobel Prize-winning chemist, argued that this shouldn't have been possible. Why? Because nuclear fission doesn't just randomly occur. It needs the perfect setup, including a very specific amount of U-235. And guess what? That kind of concentration shouldn't have been possible so long ago. Skeptics question how the reaction could have been so stable and sustained, almost like it was designed. If this was a random geological event, it was an astronomical coincidence. But if it wasn't, well, that opens up a whole different conversation. Did an ancient civilization somehow understand nuclear energy billions of years ago? Or was there something else at play? Either way, this completely challenges what we thought we knew about Earth's history. The Arculachori axe. Ever seen an axe so fancy that chopping wood with it would feel like a crime? That's exactly the case with the Arculachori axe, a 4,000-year-old artifact found in a cave in Crete back in 1934. This Minoan-era bronze axe isn't just your average ancient weapon. It's big, covered in strange symbols, and believed to have been used in religious rituals. But here's the kicker: no one can read what's written on it. Now, double-headed axes, or labris, were common in Minoan culture, but this one stands out. Most were small, sometimes made of gold or silver, but this one? Much larger and cast in bronze, with 15 mysterious inscriptions that have kept experts guessing for decades. So what do these symbols mean? Some researchers think they look a little like Linear A, the still undeciphered writing system of the Minoans. Others point out that they share similarities with the Phaistos disk, another ancient artifact that no one can translate either. But here's where things get even stranger. The cave where it was found had only metal objects, no stone or pottery, leading some to believe it was a secret stash for metalworkers. If that's true, why was this one axe so carefully inscribed? Was it a sacred offering, a symbol of power? Or was it trying to convey a lost message? The axe now sits in the Heraklion Archaeological Museum in Greece, displayed alongside the equally baffling Phaistos disk. But until someone cracks the code, it remains a silent enigma from a forgotten time. A giant Inca water model. Deep in the mountains of Peru, about 30 miles east of Abancay, sits an ancient mystery that still puzzles archaeologists today: the Sehuite monument. At first glance, it just looks like a massive carved rock, but take a closer look, and you'll see something incredible. Over 200 intricate shapes, including pools, tunnels, terraces, and water channels, all carved into stone. But what was it for? Some believe it was a tribute to the water gods, a sacred object used in religious ceremonies by the Inca people. But here's the theory that's even more fascinating. It might have been an ancient engineering model. Imagine this. Before building real irrigation systems, Incan engineers could have poured water onto the Sehuite rock and watched how it flowed, allowing them to test different designs before carving the same channels into the actual landscape. That would make the Inca some of the earliest city planners to test designs before committing to major construction, a strategy still used by modern engineers. 2,000-year-old battery. Imagine a powerful revelation that could rewrite history as we know it, challenging everything we've been told and believed for generations. Ever heard of the Baghdad battery? It sounds futuristic, but it's actually an ancient artifact that was dug up near Baghdad in the 1930s. At first glance, it looks like nothing special, just a small clay jar with a copper tube inside. sealed up with asphalt. But here's where it gets weird. Inside that copper tube, an iron rod. Fast forward to 1940, and a German archaeologist named Wilhelm Koenig took one look at it and dropped a theory that rocked the world. What if this thing was actually an ancient battery? If he was right, that would mean people over 2,000 years ago, possibly the Parthians, were messing around with electricity long before we thought anyone even understood it. Some researchers think it might have been used for electroplating, a technique where a thin layer of metal, like gold or silver, is coated onto another object. But there's a catch. While modern experiments have shown that replicas of this device can generate an electric charge, there's no solid proof that ancient civilizations actually used it for electricity. A lost light source. What if ancient Egyptians knew about electricity thousands of years before we even thought it was possible? Sounds crazy, but inside the Temple of Hathor in Dendera, Egypt, there's a carving that has sparked one of the most debated theories in archaeology. It shows what looks like a giant light bulb, complete with a filament-like shape inside and figures gathered around it. Now here's where things get really interesting. Back in the 1970s, Swiss author Erich von Däniken decided to test it out. He built a model based on the carving, and guess what? It lit up. Yep, he connected it to power, and it glowed like an early gas discharge lamp. If this was just an artistic design, why does it function exactly like a real light source? Of course, not everyone's convinced. But skeptics have a different take. They believe the carving doesn't show a light bulb at all, but rather a lotus flower with a snake inside, an important Egyptian symbol of creation and rebirth. But here's the part that doesn't add up. How were Egyptians lighting their temples and tombs? There are no soot or burn marks on the ceilings, which you'd expect if they were using torches or oil lamps. Did they have some mystery light source we haven't figured out yet? Ancient map shock. Have you ever heard of a map that shouldn't exist? Not in a buried treasure kind of way, but in a this thing defies history kind of way. In 1929, a shocking discovery was made, an ancient 1513 map drawn by Ottoman Admiral Piri Reis, revealing details no one could explain. At first glance, it looked like a regular navigation chart showing Europe, North Africa, Brazil, the usual for a 16th century explorer. But then they noticed something insane. The map also showed Antarctica. Except here's the kicker. Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820. That's 307 years later. And it gets even weirder. It didn't just show Antarctica, it showed it without ice. Hold up, Antarctica has been frozen solid for at least 6,000 years. So how did a sailor from the 1500s know what it looked like before it was buried under miles of ice? Where did Piri Reis get his information? Some say he used ancient source maps, possibly drawn by an advanced civilization long before recorded history. Others brush it off as a coincidence, a lucky guess, or just bad interpretations of the map's details. But things were about to get really weird. Certain parts of the map are scarily accurate. It is way too precise for something that should be impossible for that time period. A lost message from space. Ever heard of a place that just feels like it's hiding something? The same can be said for Devil's Hill in Kupang, Indonesia. Back in 1992, archaeologists discovered a strange-looking stone buried inside a cave on this ominous-sounding mountain. At first, it just seemed like another oddly colored rock, but once they took a closer look, things got weird. The stone isn't just any rock. It's covered in mysterious carvings of the sun, stars, and humanoid figures. Even stranger, some of the stars are connected by arrows, almost like a map of travel routes across the galaxy. Hold on, was someone trying to map the stars thousands of years ago? And here's the real twist. The Kupang stone is magnetic and slightly radioactive. That's not something you find every day. Even crazier, the carvings look eerily similar to the plaques placed on the Pioneer spacecraft Baft launched in the 1970s. The ones meant to communicate with alien life. What do you think? Drop your theories in the comments. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a mystery. Thanks for watching. See you next time.